Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Wrestling Conversations. So, joining us today for an interview is Rob Wilkins. Rob, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm thankful that you asked me to be here. So thank you.
No, absolutely. I've been let's see here. So, I started doing the podcast about a year ago too. So, I think this is interview, and I do only interviews at this point. So, I think this is interview, I think 19. So, I keep the pace. It's still pretty slow. A couple per month is kind of what I shoot for. But I think I started following you online. Gosh, I mean, it was last year, like probably spring, early summer last year, something like that. Because at that point, I really had not been on social media whatsoever, which really is very bizarre at this in 2024 for someone to not be online. I think I had Facebook that I had to get for work stuff, whatever, but I didn't have Twitter or Instagram, anything. So I think I started following you back at that point too. So at that point, that's when I started to kind of, I was aware of Fightful and would read the stuff and listen to a few shows here or there, but I didn't really start diving into things kind of until I started my own podcast. I've been wanting to have you on for a bit, so I'm glad we could make this happen. Shout out to Steven. Steven Jensen helped me get in contact with Rob. Steven's always been a nice guy that's helped me out and, you know, guide me along this path of trying to do podcasts, I guess.
Yeah, Steven's an amazing person. He's one of my favorite people that I've come to know in this whole business of wrestling media. So he's an amazing person. So
For sure, for sure. And
he
I,
can't
I so
he
I
can't know about this at all though. Like no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
yeah, Steven, hopefully you're not listening. Hopefully you're not listening to this,
Yeah.
Steven. But no, and I also you're a Minnesota guy yourself, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Okay. So I live in Fargo, North Dakota. So I'm right on the Minnesota North Dakota
Mm-hmm.
border. I actually grew up in Minnesota, more up north from where you or from where you are at this point. But I haven't met that many Minnesota people along the way. I know that they're out there that do wrestling stuff, and so cool to meet another Minnesota native. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, it's I love it here. I mean, there's always people always have different things that they don't like about the state they're in or where they live, but I enjoy it. I really do like Minnesota. I grew up in Texas and lived in uh, grew up in Florida my teenage years, and then but I've been here since 1999, and I consider this home now. I love it here, so I don't plan on going anywhere.
Okay, and I know that you're a pretty big sports fan too. Are you mostly baseball fan? Like, have we converted you to a Twins fan at this point, or are you
Oh
still
yeah,
like, okay,
I'm
that's
a
what I
Twins
thought.
fan. That was my team. Like when I got here, like I didn't have a baseball team really because I grew up, like just where I liked the Texas Rangers where I grew up, but it wasn't my like I didn't have a team. Like they weren't the team. And then once I got here, that was like this is what it's supposed to be like because in Florida. I was 8 hours from Miami for where the Marlins
Mhm.
played. I was 5 hours from where Atlanta played, so I still didn't have a team. And then when I got here, I was about an hour away from a baseball stadium,
Mhm.
and all my friends were Twins fans, so it just worked easily. And plus, they were fun, like to watch.
For sure, for sure. Have you been to a game so far this spring?
Yeah, I went a couple of weeks or a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. I went to one of the Yankees Twins games.
Oh, okay, okay. I mean, we didn't do so hot against the Yanks, but I mean, a fun team to watch play because they're having a pretty hot start so far. It'd be kind of interesting to see where they go. But the Twins, I mean, yeah, that's been a lifelong thing. Being either Twins fan, Vikings fan, Minnesota Wild fan, Timberwolves. Hopefully, they can do something. I'm not as big of a basketball person, but yeah, being a Minnesota sports fan is not always easy. There's a lot of ups and downs, and I feel like they break our heart every year for pretty much
Yes,
every sport. But I'm hoping
yes,
the Twins this year, the Central is actually not looking that bad in comparison to what expectations were. So I mean, like I think we're still in the hunt at this point. It's
yeah,
very early, but hoping they can you know pull through and get some more wins before the All Star break.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's interesting living here with not having a major a major like four sport champion. I mean, we've had the
Mhm.
Minnesota Lynx win titles, we've had the
Mhm. Mhm.
Gophers win national hockey championships, but nothing huge.
Mhm.
Like where I live in Mankato, south of Minneapolis, and we had our
Mhm.
the college I went to. Minnesota State Mankato. They actually won the Division II men's championship in basketball and also in the women's this year. So it's pretty cool to win both. But other than that, I don't get to see champions that much.
No, I know. I'm with you. So you went to Mankato. Okay. My mother and father-in-law actually went there for college. So that's where they met. So small world. It's not a super small school, but I mean, yeah, they
Very
definitely
cool.
liked it down there. I'm farther north. I'm up north a
Yeah.
little bit, but okay. Well, what a great way to start a wrestling interview is talking about baseball and other sports,
Yeah.
but I kind of like to go all over the place, but to kind of bring it back to wrestling, what was your kind of introduction to wrestling? Have you been a lifelong fan? Was it something that you picked up along the way? Or was it like, hey, I was 5 years old and I started. So what did that look like for you?
I don't remember the exact time, but I remember the exact moment. It was a weeknight or maybe it was a Saturday night. I don't know. But we were over at one of our family friend's house in Texas, East Texas, and this massive man named Andre the Giant showed up on the television, and I was just like, "What is that? Who is that? What is he doing? And what's he talking about?" And I got to see what they were doing, and I was just enamored from right there. And then I just fell in love with it right then and there, and I watched it. I remember getting in the arguments. I don't know how old you are, but I'm 42. When I was in the second grade, you were either Team Ultimate Warrior or Team Hulk Hogan. Um, and I was uh, Hogan. And I mean, that's how what it came down to. But I watched wrestling for all my life. There was a period of about 3 years where I stopped, and that was because I uh, started paying it. Well, I shouldn't have said I paid attention in college. I just kind of my focus went elsewhere. It was
Right.
mainly playing Halo with my friends, and just kind of like wrestling is just not where I. It's not as important to me. I always checked to see what was going on. Like it was always a love for me. Like, and I
Mhm.
always watched WrestleMania, no matter what. I watched WrestleMania, but
Mhm.
it wasn't. I wasn't hardcore into it by any means. Uh, I was probably like 19 to 22 around that age. And then 23 is when I got back into it around that
Mhm.
time and
Mhm.
been into it ever since.
Sure. I'm so jealous of the people that like have that specific moment where they remember watching it for the first time. Because like me, I think I started so young that I was exposed to it. Like I just don't remember what that moment was. But I'm always so jealous of people. I've talked to so many people like, oh, I remember when this and this happened. I'm like, oh, I wish I knew the exact moment. But either way. But yeah, I think for most of us, we have that time where we, take a little bit of a pause. I mean, people have been talking about that for years. I think for me, it was a little bit earlier. I had like a middle school into early high school where I kind of took my break. And then like, maybe 11th grade, I started picking it back up again, which is kind of an odd time to get back into all the things you liked as a kid. Um, but yeah, for whatever reason, that people seem to have that a little bit of gap in time where they take a break, and then once they get back, they never leave. That's the common trend when I've asked people that question over the last years. Like, yep, they have that moment, but then something brings them back in. What was the stuff that you felt like brought you back in when you were college age or a little bit after?
It was, that's a great question. I think what it was is I was flipping channels one day. I recall seeing TNA. Like I was
Mhm,
watching and I saw TNA and I was like, this is kind of, I mean, it's different. And I like that. I think it was WWE was too repetitive for me, and it was
mhm,
something different. And I
mhm,
recognized some of the guys that were there, and I mean, I was a tape creator even before
mhm,
that, so I knew a lot of the names like Christopher Daniel, Samoa Joe. So
mhm,
I knew those names, and I just watched it, and I kind of like started getting back. And then you had John Cena was getting very popular. I didn't care for Cena at the beginning,
mhm,
and then I watched him live for the first time, and I turned. Like I
mm,
was the first time
mhm,
after I watched him the first time live. Right after that, I became a fan of his because just the way he got the crowd like on him
mhm,
was something I've really never seen other than like The Rock and Stone Cold in person. So there was
mhm,
just something about him, and it was And I think part of the match had to do with it. It was an I Quit match against JBL at Judgment Day.
Oh yes, yep, I remember that
And
one.
so it was pay-per-view, and I think that's what did it too. Is just they beat each other's ass. And sorry if I can't curse,
Oh, you
but
could say you could say anything you want.
okay. So that I think that's what did it. Like for me to get like really back into it and
Mhm.
just enjoying the sport. And uh, yeah, I just started watching a little bit of everything, and I got back into it. And then I had some personal things come up in my life, like a pretty bad like relationship split, and
Mhm. Mhm.
wrestling was there for me. Yeah, and I think that helped. That got my that gave me things to do. Like
Yeah.
I was able to go search for, like, I've seen a lot of AJ Styles matches. I want to see like everything. Like I want to see what
Mhm.
Dave Meltzer's top matches are for AJ Styles. I want to see what
Mhm.
other people say, and I just kind of Wade Keller and stuff like that. I want to see what matches he thought were great, and
Mhm.
so I watched. I would say when it comes to AJ Styles, I've probably I'm up there with people that have probably seen him the most. Like watching his matches, I've watched a lot because that was my guy. I grew up as a Bret Hart guy, and then I
Mhm.
didn't really have anybody for a while, and then it became AJ Styles because this guy was just he was cool, like
Mhm.
he was. I don't know height wise where he was compared to Bret, but they had the similar body style,
Oh yeah, for
and but
sure.
he could fly. That's
Yeah.
what I liked about him, and I just that was my guy. And even though I was watching WWE more, that was still my guy. So
Yeah,
and still
that's
is today.
yeah, I mean it's crazy to see because what is he 46, 47, something like
Yeah,
that too. That I mean he just had that match with Cody that was just unbelievable stuff. And it's like yeah, like his style has he's adapted over time and he kind of will he can still have that big match really whenever it's needed. It's just so crazy how good he still is. And I probably was I missed a lot of AJ's. I went back to watch some, but I still need to do like one of these days like a deep dive of like a lot of his TNA stuff. I mean, I've watched a lot of the New Japan stuff, some TNA stuff, and then when he would go to Ring of Honor here or there too. But do you have any recommendations for somebody that's trying to go back and watch old AJ Styles matches?
oh man, there's any match. Obviously, the one that everybody brings up is the triple threat match with him
Yeah,
and
right.
Samoa Joe and Christopher Daniels.
Yep.
So that's the obligatory match. I liked a lot of his matches with just his singles matches with Joe
Mm-hmm.
Daniels. He had some really good tag matches too with like depending on who he teamed with. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he did his stable stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
there's so many matches that he was just so good in,
Mm-hmm.
and even like his Bullet Club stuff, I loved. The AJ was just there was something about him, and there still is that just captures the um, just captures my attention span like more than anybody else. And I don't know how that happened or what did it, but I would say some of his matches would be that I would recommend would be obviously his match against John Cena, like from SummerSlam a few years,
Mm-hmm.
or was that Royal Rumble? I think it was SummerSlam.
I think
He had one with he had
yeah,
one that was just amazing.
I can't. They had like a series. I don't remember. There was one that was definitely the best. I can't remember which one it was though. But they had like a three. It was like a Money in the Bank, SummerSlam,
Yeah, it
Rumble,
was
something
Royal
like that.
Rumble.
Okay.
Yeah, yep, it was Royal Rumble. Other than that, like I mean, obviously the I enjoyed the his matches with Shinsuke from New Japan.
Mm-hmm.
He had some great matches with Jay Lethal. One of the matches that I love that I tell people they should watch is a match from Revolution Pro. It's him versus Marty Scurll and Will Ospreay. So that's one. He has some fantastic matches against uh, Kyle. Like he has a good one with Kyle O'Reilly from 2014
Mm-hmm.
or 15. During that time,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't really even matches he teamed with Kurt Angle in TNA. Those were just
Mm-hmm.
dynamite, and especially any matches he had against Kurt Angle were good too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's so many. And what I would tell somebody to do is go on to cagematch.net. And when you type in AJ Styles, there's an option where you can, like, they give you all the different things that you can look at. There's a thing called matches. Like, I think it's like matches worth watching or
Mm-hmm.
something. They have a whole list of different ones that are just good. And I mean, for the most part, they're pretty much spot on. I mean, even if you want to go to his early WWE days, you go to
Mm-hmm.
like some of his matches against Daniel Bryan. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and his match against I'm a little biased because I was a huge. There are two guys that I love in WWE: Finn Balor and AJ Styles,
Mm-hmm.
and I got to see their first one-on-one matchup in WWE at TLC in 2017 at Target Center. So,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
that happened out of the blue because of Bray Wyatt was unfortunately sick. So, I just kind of lucked into that, but that one plays a special part for me. But yeah, you just really can't go wrong with a lot of his matches.
Yeah, he's just one of those guys. I mean, I think like he's like Brett in that way too, where it's just there's something about everything that they do is believable. Like you can't like everyone knows what wrestling is, and but still like there's just something different about certain guys that it's just like things just jump off the screen, and like and then you add in like the flying element with AJ's, and yeah, I mean there's just not many people that can compete with that. I mean, really, even at this point when he's 46, 47, whatever he is,
Yeah.
it's pretty great to see that how he's been able to keep that pace up and still make changes too. Like, so it's
Hmm.
like you don't look at him and say, "Oh, he's not the old AJ Styles." People, I think will say that from time to time, but then he'll pull out a match like he just had with Cody, and it's just
Cody.
like, "Oh
Yeah.
yeah, okay,
And
never
even the
mind."
one he had with Randy Orton was
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
So,
I mean, a couple back to back matches that are just like, yeah, people are going to be talking about those for a bit. We can probably back off the AJ's lost a step or two along the way. But okay, so now that you got back into wrestling too, I always that for the people that I've interviewed that cover wrestling in whatever form, whether it's podcast, news writing, or some of each, they have that moment when they are a fan of something and then they decide like, okay, I'm going to pursue this further because it's a whole other thing to watch something and be a fan and then starting to cover it in whatever format that is. So what did that process look like for you?
well, yeah. So what happened with me is, I think part of the problem, like when I got out of wrestling, was because I was pretty, um, I wouldn't say let down. It was more of the standpoint is I was in high school and that's when I originally tried doing this, being a wrestling writer, and I wrote for a couple of sites. I did some aggregation for like 411 Mania for a little bit, and I worked for Lords of Pain for one day before they let me go. It was nothing I did. It was just they had too many people, and so that was fine. But yeah, and that's what did it. Like I tried. Like that's what I wanted to be like Wade Keller and Dave Meltzer. I mean, I spent a lot of my money like college, like high school. I'd work at Target and then I get my check and pretty much send a money order to Dave Meltzer or Wade Keller, or have my mom pay for it and give her the cash, and I'd get the newsletters. And then I got into tape trading, and then all of a sudden it's just like I know a lot about like the history and stuff going on. And then I started talking to people on the AOL message boards, and people were starting to come to me for news, and that's how I got into it. And then after a while, right after I finished high school, I was like, I'm not making any money doing this, and I'm miserable. All my friends are going out, going to going to the movies and stuff like that, going out, just hanging out, and I can't do it because I'm broke. And it was just kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, this isn't going to work. I wanted it to work, and it didn't. So I left that part for almost 20 years. I want to say 18, 19 years, and came back. And the reason I came back was because of Sean Ross Sapp. I was I was always just going online trying to read what was going on still. I wasn't like, I mean, I had Twitter and stuff like that, but I wasn't just, I was always like, who the hell is this SRS guy? I keep seeing his name, but I don't know who he is. And I finally found out, and I just really liked it. And it wasn't just him. I really liked what was going on their site on Fightful. It was Jeremy Lambert, uh, Andrew Thompson, who's with Post Wrestling now,
Yeah.
and Sean. It was those three for the most part, and then they had like a couple of people who did live results, but I really liked what they were doing because they covered UFC, they covered wrestling, which I loved UFC and I loved wrestling, and they also had boxing, which I'm not a big boxing fan, but I still enjoy it. So I was like, if I'm going to get back into this, I kind of want to see if something pops up. And I knew compared to like some people just want to start right away, like in the business, and that's no for a lot of people. You have to start somewhere, and Sean was looking for somebody to help moderate a Facebook group. That's how I got started, moderating a Facebook group, started moderating YouTube, and then after a while, I pitched him a show for Fightful Select because I knew that was something that's where they met. Fightful Select is basically, as my co-host says, our bread and butter. So that's where we need stuff. And if I knew if I could add something to it and it didn't, and it was a value to Fightful, he gave me a shot because not only that, but I also like helped out on the back end of stuff, helping with the site, giving them uh, different ideas for social media, stuff like that. And it just, it helped me get in. And uh, I saw that what got me like further in was he was looking for someone to do live results of AEW Dark. And I haven't done live results in years, so I'm like, it can't be that hard. And anybody that can do who could do live results of AEW Dark gets my respect because that is incredibly hard to do live results for because the matches go like
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And I was doing that, and I was doing a good enough job that he asked me if I looked out because I can't remember who the writer was, but he basically left about a week or two after I started, and he asked me if I wanted to do Dynamite, like as a test run, and I said sure. And the first night that I got to do it was the night that Sting debuted for AEW. That was my first show, and it's funny because I watched that moment. I mean, that's a when it comes to wrestling media, that's my moment where I'm just like, I stopped and I realized I'm like, crap, I'm supposed to be covering this. Like it took my attention away and everything. And that was just a big moment for me. And I always go back to that, but that's how I got into it, got back into it. I started low and just worked myself way up. And now I don't do too many news articles, but I do a lot of stuff on the back end. I do, like I set up the podcast and I do some other things like the resources and I do quite a bit, but not as much as some of the other guys, but I basically, I know my role per se. So,
No, and I think like if you're producing anything, and again, like I've only done this podcast for a year. I did a couple news things here or there, and like just like having exposure to what that is like. I think like people really have no idea how much work goes into all of that stuff. That it's like it is. I mean, I think you get more just like anything else, you get more efficient as you go along. But like at
mhm.
least having some exposure to some of those things, I'm like, wow, that is actually very hard and takes a lot of work to keep sites going and to yeah, I mean there's a lot of stuff that goes into that people just don't see.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even with, yeah, the WrestleMania rumors for Minneapolis were going on for quite a while. And I worked on, like, I'm not a news guy like Sean is, like, and our newer guy, Corey Brennan, who does a lot of our
Mhm,
NXT stuff.
mhm,
I'm not like one of our reporters. So, but I did work on trying to get a lot of WrestleMania information, working with Sean on that.
mhm,
And as much time as I put in and stuff, I was literally just it when they announced that it was Vegas instead of Minneapolis. A lot of people were like, oh, Rob's like going to be sad and everything. I was just kind of like, no, I'm okay because it got to
mhm,
the point where I was putting so much like time into it,
mhm,
talking to people, and it was like I'm not a news guy because I can't do this.
mhm.
Like I lose patience with people and trying to figure out what when somebody's feeding me crap and when they're not. And
Yeah.
it's amazing people that would feed me crap early knew what they were doing, but they knew I didn't bite, so I got respect from them. So they started giving me real stuff, and
Mhm.
but then you have to verify it from another person because you just don't want to roll with it.
Right.
And it was, I got a hard lesson in a way. And, um, but it wasn't anything where I got embarrassed by anybody. But
Mhm.
one of my machines is going off. I'm sorry.
No, you're
Uh,
good. You're good.
so, anyways, um, sorry, I gotta fix this.
No, take your time. Take your time. Take your time. You're good. No, I think like if we're looking at like the news side of things too, I just cannot imagine how difficult that. Again, I have no exposure to that whatsoever. That's just me as an outsider looking in. But the news side of things, I cannot imagine how frustrating that is too. And I think like people really like to dog on wrestling media, and I think in some ways, rightfully so. There's a lot of people that run stuff that do not put the amount of work that someone like Sean does. That it's like when they put something, I mean, you can believe with very high certainty that this has been, verified. They've done the legwork, and it's not something that's just thrown up quickly. But yeah, I cannot imagine how frustrating that can be. You got to be a special person to be able to consistently do that.
Yeah, it is. It's tough to be able to do that, and you get you get tired of it because you work and work on it, and when you get something that you've been working on, and all of a sudden you can't go with it because something else has changed, it can get very frustrating. And I don't know how he does it because I've seen some of the stuff on the back end that he's worked on, and it's stuff that never materialized that he
Yeah.
couldn't report,
Yep.
so it's stuff like that where I know he had to put time in it because he wrote about it. And I mean, I don't obviously know like how many people he talks to for certain stories, but I know he
Mm-hmm.
puts like the work into it and stuff like that. And
Mm-hmm.
you're right, that's the thing, there's a lot of people that take issue with what we do and like what Sean does, and it's frustrating to see to an extent. And I but it's also one of those things where these other people make it worse because we can pretty much tell when somebody's making stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just,
Mm-hmm.
we know what we have to do.
Right.
And basically I know if in my way is if I can verify something for more than two people and I trust them, I feel like I did my job. But if it's something I can't, it just rolls off the back now. So it can get tiring, but I I still love it though.
And yeah, it's just fair. It's just like to me, I just think like there are. It's just so I think it's unfair for people to use like blanket statements of like, oh, it's wrestling media and it's wrestling reporters. It's like, well, there's a difference. I mean, this that sort of like dialogue happens, I think, in every form of media
Oh
out there. Like if you look at movie news, like okay, there's a difference if you look at a story from the Hollywood Reporter versus some other outlet that is maybe doesn't have the best track record, right? I mean, there are levels to this too. It's just so unfair to
oh
I feel like to label everything as one whole. It's like that's really not what happens, and but people like to get real fired up about it though online. That's
yeah,
for sure.
and that they do. And like
Mhm.
you said, that's a perfect segue for that because a lot of people like to complain about the WWE press conference or the media
Mhm.
junkets. Well, the thing is a lot of people that go to those are not. They are not media journalists. Like they don't have news websites. They have YouTube channels where they interview wrestlers. They don't
Mhm.
go after the news.
Mhm.
So a lot of people don't understand that. And the other thing too there is there's certain things that we can do stories on. We're not going to be able to get in depth with what writers from the Wall Street Journal can get.
Right.
Would we love to? Absolutely. But the one thing that like Sean recently said is he I'm going to paraphrase, but basically he made mention of how um, post wrestling, how great of a job they've done
Mhm.
with a lot of the Vince McMahon stuff. The way we look at it is let the best people do it.
Mhm.
That's would we like to? Obviously, we'd love to be able to get that stuff, but when you have just really good like Brandon and John, they just do great work
Yeah.
at post, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really one of those things where they they're better at it when it comes to that stuff. There's things that we're better at, and sometimes we just have a different. I don't think agenda is the right word. We just have different things we're working on that we're trying to get stories on. So I mean, one thing that it's just one of those things where you never know what people are working on and what they're doing, and it's their they have to do what's best. Sean does what's best for Fightful because he has so many like people that work for Fightful, and he has to do what's best for the site, not what's best for him. He has to do what's best for the website, so it can people can jump all over him, but he can't. The one thing that I've learned, my biggest thing that I've learned with Sean is I can't assume because assuming gets us in trouble, like when it comes to like reporting. So that's something I've learned from him, and that's pretty much what it comes down to in wrestling in general. Like when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
those press conferences and the junkets, we don't know what somebody else's I don't like the word agenda, but we don't know what somebody else wants to work on and what
Right.
they want to know. So when somebody we might think a softball question, but that's fine. That's what that person's working on,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
I mean that's yeah
There's been some. I mean, there's been like whether it's WWE or AEW, like there's been some cool moments, but as far as like a platform to actually accomplish something, I feel like it hasn't done that. Just like there's just been lots of stuff that's been
yeah
stirred up, and it's just like it would be great for them to actually be open to real questions and stuff too. That it's like
yeah
there are people out there that are trying to ask real questions, and it's just like we had the I can't remember. I'm sorry, I can't remember the guy that asked the Drew Gulak question, right? That like
yeah
that's a legitimate question to ask, and
yeah
then it's just like all the things in which prompted the Triple H response and just like I just some of those things have just turned into such a mess, which is just so unfortunate that they're just they're not. I think they should either do them the right way or just maybe not do them. Like I don't know, I don't. But with
yeah
if nothing else, at least it's a platform for whether they get a good answer or not. It at least maybe draws attention to things that need it. That's I guess one good thing that can come from it. But
yeah. The guy, his name is Lucas. I'm gonna get the last name wrong, but it's Lucas Charpoy or Cheap
yes,
Charpiet.
yes, thank you.
So yeah, so um, yeah, he did a great. That I mean, that's a great question. It just
Hmm.
the it just back, and this is no like shot at him at all
Hmm.
because he didn't set it up this way. It's just the way that it came out. But
Yeah,
that question backfired on Fightful and
yeah,
uh, in PW Insider. So it was just one of those things because it was a good question.
yeah.
It just came back and hit us hard.
For
So
sure. And it's I just I mean, and I can understand like people were really like, getting on Sean about like, oh, why even pursue this? But it's like also if it's like that's your not even just your own livelihood, but like you said, you've got all these people working for you. And it's like if you could clarify that, why would you not do that? Because it's just like that
yeah,
would hurt everybody. Like
it,
especially if it's not if it's one thing if it was justified, which that's I mean, you can go back and look at all the stuff. It's not.
yeah.
But
Well,
you
it's
know,
it's funny because Triple H has verified. He verified our CM Punk story,
yeah.
and I mean that was we were the only ones that really had it that way, and he verified it our that way. So when he said that, it's just this doesn't make any sense. We've been like spot on for the most part, and I honestly can't go through and tell you what we've missed on or misreported, and um, it's just stuff like that. Where it just did more harm than anything, and
Yeah.
people will use that and jump on it. And the funny thing is that I find rather entertaining through all of it is people we it took me a while to come to peace at it that we can't not everybody's going to love us, not everybody's going to like us,
Mm-hmm.
and there are people that have um, that take their I'm not a psychologist, but they take their anger out on social media. So and that comes at us sometimes, and I notice a lot of times where they'll say Fightful this, Fightful that in derogatory ways. But then when
Mhm.
you go looking at their Twitter, they're retweeting our stories, even though it's from a different like outlet that's aggregating. So I just find it um, ironic per se. So
Yeah,
it's
some of that stuff is just like, I mean, it's probably everywhere social media, but I guess
yeah.
if we're just like, for you and I that pay attention more to wrestling stuff, but it is, I mean, it really is. I think more than anything, it just like I'm not, and as I've probably mentioned this before, as we were talking, that I'm not the biggest social media person. It's like when I do go on, it's like wow, it's kind of a reminder why I don't. But there obviously are pros to it too. But it's just it's like makes me like sad more than anything else by looking like how people, because like I cannot imagine like if that was your life where you were saying something that is like some of the more like horrible things you could ever say to people. It's like how do you think that is like okay, but also things you would never say to someone's face either. That's like, but it's just, I mean, it kind of just makes me sad more than anything. So I'm like, okay, time to take a break from the Twitter for a little bit and just do something else. But um, it's one of those things too that I guess you have no choice but to endure those type of things. But yeah, it's just
mm,
unfortunate that the way that some people tend to handle it.
yeah, it is, and it like I said, it took a while, and the one thing that I've learned is I know some people say mute and go on, and some people say I don't block, I just mute. I prefer to block because
Yeah.
that what that does for me is that tells that person that they are not worth my time. That's the
Mm-hmm.
way I look at it instead
Mm-hmm.
of like letting them yell into the void as some say. But
Yeah.
I'll block people because that's just me saying I'm showing you right now you are not worth my time. So
Yeah.
do I sometimes mess up blocking people? Not very much because it, I do a quick like background search before I block somebody to see
Mm-hmm.
like what are some things they've said in the past. Is
Mm-hmm.
it just a one time thing? Maybe I misunderstood. And usually not. Usually it's like, okay, no
Mm-hmm.
matter what happens, this person is not going to change. There's only been a handful of times where I've seen them like do a 360 and or
Mm-hmm.
180, whatever you want to say,
Mm-hmm.
and it went like I realized that okay, maybe I was wrong doing that, but for the most part, it's just one of those things where I've learned to just let it go, just let
Right.
it go.
Yeah, I mean, that's
So
the only thing you can do is just, yeah, I mean, it's just a different opinion where it's, or different, like different way to approach things when, especially where you are, on these platforms where they're getting traction, which is a good thing, but that's kind of like the negative or the dark side of that too, ever, where it's just like, okay, you're putting yourself out there for like, kind of public scrutiny, I guess to some extent. Which that kind of leads me into my next kind of thought I wanted to ask you about too. So you mentioned like getting into Fightful, you're kind of been helping out things in the back end too. Um, how was the transition from you doing things like that to like, okay, I'm going to be on camera doing shows? I mean, were you always comfortable like talking and being on camera and, having an audience, things like that? Was that something that for you that came easily, or was that something that was like, okay, that was a little bit of an adjustment?
it started out easier for me than I anticipated it would because I did a show. His name's Pat. Throwback is his name. He has a
Mm-hmm.
channel, and basically, I would do some just 30-minute, 45-minute shows on his channel, and
Mm-hmm.
we I don't even know like how many people watched. There might have been nobody watching, but I think what helped me was just kind of sitting back, just having a good time talking to somebody and doing that. So starting off that way helped, and then I went to Fightful and started on Select. And I knew that the viewership would be low to start because nobody knew me,
Mm-hmm.
and started doing that. And then once I went over and started doing other things, it kind of like came back. It's like, okay, I am not nearly as good as everybody else, and I'm still getting better. That's the thing that I've come to grips with. And I'm not going to be perfect, but I've gotten a lot better, and that's what made it a lot easier now. Now I'm more outgoing on the show. I make jokes on my show, and our show. I always joke that our show, the show that I do, coexisting with Rob and Maggie, we are. If there's one show that is definitely rated R every week, it's our show. Because
Right.
we either I'm let an F bomb out by accident, or my co-host, who is Bulgarian,
Mhm.
um, she will drop whatever word she wants to. It doesn't matter. So we just have a good old time. Plus, we give
Mhm.
each other like grief, or we just have fun, and that's the biggest thing. And um, I think since like realizing that, I got a lot better than what I was, and now I host our pre-shows. I host some of our retro reviews. I'll sometimes step in. I've done our TNA post show. I do the Wrestle Kingdom post shows
Mhm.
for, so Sean trusts me to do some stuff, so it's good. And that makes me happy to be able to do that. And I want to just get better and better. So that's the way I look at it. And occasionally I get to step in. I get to do a couple of things here and there, but I did start off nervous, but I think it
Mhm.
could have been a lot worse. And there are some days where it's wow, we have a lot of people watching right now, and this isn't too bad. But
Mhm.
more than anything, I'm at peace with it,
Mhm.
and I just go with the flow. So it's been a lot easier now. But I think that's with
Mhm.
anything you do. You just get better as you go along.
For sure. No, yeah, it definitely is like when you do it for the first time. Like it's something for me. I've been doing this for like a year. Obviously, I'm not on a platform like Fightful or anything like that too. But I feel like it's been good practice. I'm like, okay, I've at least gotten better with this, more relaxed. It's just like, and I think if like you really have to just let yourself go too, because I feel like it comes across when you're having a good time, when you're having fun, people can see that resonates with them, makes the show, more enjoyable too. And I spend like for my actual job, I spend all day talking. I'm a therapist of sorts, not mental health, but I'm a speech language pathologist too. So I do lots of different treatment for all sorts of different things. So I talk to people, but it's still I get on the camera for like that's recorded like this, and it's just like, oh, I do way worse here than I do on my actual job when I have to be on and all the things, and it's just a different way to kind of do things. But I feel like for you and Maggie, like that's a show that I've really enjoyed. You guys just have really good chemistry too. So I feel like whoever you're talking with, like it just has to be a good fit. Otherwise, like you've seen shows from thinking of other podcasts that I've listened to that are like non-wrestling. If they don't click with the guest or if they don't click with whoever the co-host is, like that kind of comes across. And you guys have always had a a good vibe between you two.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. Like I always like sharing the story with about Maggie and how we started. Before I forget, like one of the things that like struggle with now, and I've been doing this show for a while, is the the like that. I still work on that, and I've gotten a lot better. But I know I've done that a few times already in this, and it's just one of those things where I continue to work. But going back to the Maggie, like how I got involved with Maggie is we were doing a watch along. I can't remember which one, and it was the first time I ever met her. And I thinking like this woman is hilarious. She's just funny as she can be, and it's not. She's not doing it on purpose. It's just the way she is.
Mm-hmm.
And I threw the idea out there. I said, "Look, I want to do a podcast. I think you are really good. You make good comments. You make a lot of things make sense. I want to know if you have any interest in this." And she said, at first, no. She appreciated it, but she wasn't comfortable. And then after she told me to come back in a couple of months, and I did. Like I didn't pressure her at all. And all of a sudden, she said, "Hell with it. Let's try. Let's do it."
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I I when I basically I shoot my shot for Sean. I said,
Mm-hmm.
"I have an idea for a show," and he's like, "Okay, well, let me know what it is, and we'll talk about it." And then I'm like, I replied back. I'm like, "Yeah, it'd be me and Maggie," and he just said, "Oh, okay, well, you guys are in. And I'm like, what? Because I got Maggie, you're all for it? He goes, yeah. I'm like, okay, that works for me. And so that's what did it. And Maggie got our show greenlit, and I was like, well, she knows, like, that's good with me. I'm like, I'm cool with that. You got me my show. So, because, and I think that was one of the best things I've done in my life was doing a show with her, because we became really close best friends since doing the show. We talk pretty much every day, just she lives in a time zone that's 7 hour difference, I believe, and we just are, yeah, 8 hour difference, and it's just one of those things where we just get along really well. We have each other's sense of humor, and it just works, like you said, because we get each other, and we also have an understanding on guests. We're not going to make anyone uncomfortable, or neither are we going to make ourselves uncomfortable. So if there's somebody that we don't want on the show, we're not going to put them on.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things, and we haven't ran into that really either, where we haven't had a person that we didn't want on. So
Right. Yeah, it's one of those. Yeah, I feel like if you have control over, to some extent, like what you want to do, and it's like, okay, I feel like this is my baby, is, for lack of a better term, of, okay, you can kind of do what you want with it too. That's kind of a nice spot to be when you have control of things too. And I think it's nice to have that in life. It doesn't have to be podcasting; can be really anything, right? Obviously, there's always rules to follow and stuff like that. But for me, like, even if this podcast went nowhere, like, that doesn't really matter to me. Like, it's like, if I
yeah,
do it because it's fun, I like to talk wrestling, and it's one of those things. It's like, I have a day job, which I like that and I enjoy that. I mean, it's still work, but it's nice to have something that is completely yours, that you can just, okay, I can go on here, I can do whatever I want, have anybody on that will say yes, right? Those type of things.
yeah,
And so it's just nice to have that, for a lack of a better term, creative outlet to just, have another project to kind of work on.
yeah. And that's the thing. Like I always try to do, if somebody asks, like, for me to do something, I usually do it. There's only been like 2 or 3 times that I haven't, and it's just because of past comments that somebody made, like on their Twitter account. It's like, I don't
Yeah.
want to be associated with them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's things like that, but it's, yeah, I always try, because some of us have to start somewhere. The way I look at it,
Yeah.
there was a kid that's probably 16 or 17 now. He's probably 19, I'd say. But when he started, he says, I can't offer you any money, and I only get like 3 or 4 viewers, and I think one of them's my brothers. But I would love to interview. I'm like, absolutely. He's like, I don't care if it's one person or if it's just me and you. I'm like, let's do it. And now he gets about 1,500 a week, and I don't want
Yeah.
to say his name because I don't think he's doing wrestling anymore, and he's
Okay.
very quiet now, about doing like so. But it was fun. Like, that was the thing. Like, I just gave him. I was like, I'll do it, and I actually don't think he does wrestling at all anymore. I think he just does video game stuff, and I don't know much about video games like I used to, so it just doesn't work out. And but that's the thing. Like, sometimes it's just fun to talk wrestling, and that's
Yeah, for
what
sure.
makes it better. I mean, right now I could be, like I said earlier before we started, I'm getting to do this instead of watching Ring of Honor or TNA. And don't get me wrong, I'll eventually watch those episodes, uh, probably tomorrow. But sometimes I need a break from it, and that's the thing. People don't understand that I watch close to 35 hours of wrestling almost a week. Almost.
Wow,
I
that's
mean,
that's insane. Whenever I think about, oh, hey, I watch a lot of wrestling, I'll think about you saying that, because I'm like, okay, because I do spend a lot of time watching, and I think I've cut back a little bit. I think for me, the key is, and again, this is, I'm not doing post shows or anything like that, so I don't have to be as caught up as someone like you. If obviously, if you're doing lots of shows and stuff, but like, I really have tried to be more selective and really, like, tell myself, okay, what I prefer to do is, like, watch a little bit of a lot of things, but I'm not caught up 100% on almost anything. Like, it's like, there's not any show other than, probably Dynamite, Collision, that I watch every week no matter what. Everything else I kind of just, sample this, sample that, get some New Japan in. That way I watch a little bit more common, but I'm starting to get into a little bit more TNA and Ring of Honor every once in a while, and that's kind of how I feel like I have to do it to maintain it all, because there's just so much out there, which is a good thing. But
as I ran through the numbers in my head, I was way off on that estimate. It's more like 25 to 27, because you take a couple independent shows that I don't catch up on. So it's one of those things where sometimes I'm watching a show that's 2 weeks old, but it's still something I want to see because I heard about it, or if it makes, I can't believe this, but it's crazy that sometimes I'll get a wrestler asking me what they thought of their match, and that is like the biggest compliment, because the thing is I tell them I've never been in the ring, but I'll tell them, like, from an entertaining standpoint, what I like. And the thing is I'm an awful reviewer, because if I'm entertained, you did your job. That's why my brother will tell me I'm the worst movie reviewer in the world, because if I'm entertained, I think it's considered a good movie. That's just the way it is. And that's the thing with wrestling. If I'm entertained by it, it was a good match. That's why like Raw, when Raw bothered everybody else, it didn't bother me as much as others, because it killed 3 hours a night, or killed 3 hours on a Monday night. Granted, I was going through a lot of things here and there, but that's the thing. If I'm entertained, I'm happy. There's sometimes where I made a rule a long time ago that I would never go after wrestlers, not because they could kick my ass, but it's not that. It's because they're just doing their jobs. It's not like they're not the ones writing stories for the most part. I mean, some of them might be, but
right.
And they're the ones doing the moves. They're the ones putting in the work, the travel, everything like that. It's easy for me to say this sucked when I don't know. And that's the thing. Wrestlers, they get my respect to like the fullest, because they're the ones out there doing it. And the only thing like I ever might complain about is story wise, but I don't put that on the wrestler. The only time I will bitch and moan about a wrestler is if they do something or say something that is not like cool, like if they do something, if they hurt somebody intentionally, or if they do something like stupid outside of the ring, like that's the only time I'll be all over somebody. But even then, I sometimes feel hypocritical, because who am I to say something? But that's probably the problem with my podcast, is we're very positive people.
But
we don't go after the negative.
I think that's needed, though. It's like there's a difference between like somebody just flat out ignoring something that has to be addressed, and just trying to keep the theme of the show being positive and look for those things. And just like, I think that's why people are, that's what bothers me about, again, not even just wrestling centric, but just for, I don't know, probably any form of entertainment, right? We're just, obviously, like, everyone has their thoughts too, and we like to kind of, okay, here's what we would do, or here's what we could think about this. But when we get to the territory where we take it too seriously, or we're too fired up about something, then it's just kind of like, what are we doing? This is supposed to be fun, right? That's, at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's supposed to be fun, and that sort of thing. So
yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things where it's the day that I make it personal is the day that I would want to stop doing this, because then it's not fun. Because I look at it like this: I never want to hurt anybody's feelings. Like, and I know wrestlers are thick skinned and stuff like that. They can handle it because they hear it outside, like when they're in the ring. But it's one of those things where I look at it like, who am I to say this stuff to them? And even then, I don't always think it's a big issue. Like the word botch, like I'll see somebody that does it. I don't say the word, because I don't look at it as like a botch. I don't care for that word, because the way I look at it is shit happens. That's the easiest way to say it, because most of the time that will work. What they're trying to do will work. Over time, there's certain times where you're just like, okay, like Sin Cara back in the SmackDown days, where he would usually not land his flips. Then it got to the point where I'm like, okay, let's kind of stop. If you're not
Yep.
gonna, then I would complain about it. But like when a guy slips on the ring, I'm not gonna be botch. I'm not that kind of guy. Like it's not a botch to me, and
Yeah.
it's just more like, oh, shit happened.
It's such a weird term too. Like if we're talking baseball, like okay, someone's rounding second and they fall. Oh, like the runner botched. Just like what people don't talk like that. It's just like
yeah,
stuff happens. Like because that stuff happens in
yeah,
sports. I mean, like hey, things happen. It's no different. I mean, there's entertainment involved, but it's like anything physical. Like you're gonna have stuff. And I've never understood why people get so caught up in that because like I'd like to see you get in there and try it, right? I mean, it's just
yeah. That's the thing, and I mean that's why I think we changed our show names from post shows to review and results
mhm.
because we just review it. We don't say like I shouldn't check this match out. I know, like on my show, if it's something we don't want to talk about, like if it didn't interest like us, we like if it's a certain match, we don't bring it up because we used to bring up every match and say like Xavier Woods wrestled Sin Cara. I know I just brought his name up, but like that match went this way. We realized like we're not giving enough people like we're skipping people, and we realized that it comes to the point where if we're not, it'd be better just not to mention that match and just talk about what we want to focus on the good.
Mm-hmm.
And there's certain times where we do have to talk about the negative things and like the Vince McMahon stuff that
Right.
we have to like be serious because what he did was awful.
Mm-hmm.
Allegation wise, like we have to talk about that stuff
Mm-hmm.
because people come to us for information a lot and sometimes it gets uncomfortable, but it is what it is.
Yes. Yeah.
And we have to do our job like for that. And
Mm-hmm.
I just try to be basically what it comes down to is I just try to be a good person. That's really what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
And just having fun because if you're not having fun doing this, why the hell are you doing it?
Right. I'm with you on that. It's like, what are you doing if you're not having some fun? Well, Rob, I mean, I could keep you here all night, but before we go to let everyone that's listening to this know where they can find you, where can they find your shows, where can they find you on social media, all the plugs.
Yeah. Well, I want to say again, thank you for having me on. I had a blast. Anytime you want to do this again, I will. I have a tendency to just talk and talk and talk. So I apologize if you have to edit this later.
No, I'll keep it all in. I mean, we'll definitely
Yeah.
have to have you back again because I have
Yeah.
more questions. I'm like, oh, I could ask this and this. So like, we'll have
Yeah.
to have
Definitely.
you on for a part two. And no, and thank you for just being one of the, and obviously this is the first time that I'm meeting you. But still I can just, even from your shows, but even meeting you now too, like I can just tell that you're just a genuine, nice guy. So that those people are few and far between in life. So just thank you for being who you
Oh,
are.
no problem. I appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah. I had a blast doing this. This is one of the best times I've had doing a podcast. So thank you for that. But you can follow me at Rob Wilkins, RobWilkins on X. I'm also on Instagram at Fightful Rob. I'm on Threads at Fightful Rob. Every Friday at 3 o'clock Eastern, I am on Fightful Overbooked for coexisting with Rob and Maggie. Like I said, we just have a good time. We are not. We are. We are rated R. That's the easiest way to say it. And it's usually us making fun of ourselves. I mean, I said some stuff today that embarrassed myself. So it's just things like that, but it's not serious. We just have fun. We talk wrestling and we have one story. We bring one story out a week that's non-wrestling and it's a positive story. We call it the Cooper effect. It's from, Agent Del Cooper from Twin Peaks, who says to do something positive every day. And we do like one story. Today we talked about a whale, like, so, I mean, like a good positive story. We love animals. So we talk about things like that. We do one story a week. It's a short, like 2 minutes, but we have fun. And eventually I'll bring back dad jokes or some other jokes that I do. We've had really good moments on our show with Tom Campbell. Sean Ross Sapp stopped by today for a little bit just good old times. We get people to stop in, and just have fun. I definitely wish people would check it out more because I know we have a good time. But every Friday at 3 o'clock Eastern on Fightful Overbooked, and then you can, if there's a pay per view or PLE with WWE or AEW, that day there is always a pre show on Fightful Select that I host and we have guests on there. So this Sunday, I will be doing one for Double or Nothing. Not sure on the time, probably around 3 o'clock Eastern, I'm guessing. But I'll be doing that tomorrow. Or Saturday, we won't be doing one for King and King of the Ring, or Queen of the Ring rather, because of the time. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't really work out. Mm-hmm. So, but I'm on there. I'm going to be doing retro reviews soon on Fightful Select. So I'm on Fightful. Mm-hmm. Like if I'm not on my Twitter account, I'm on Fightful's Twitter account doing stuff. So, mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that's a long ramble of what I do, but I just want to advertise myself too, because I know we want more viewers for our show, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do that here.
No, absolutely. That's all the things that people want to hear. So, but again, Rob, thank you again so much for taking the time. We'll have to have you back on. We'll have to, we need to talk more about you, but also we'll have to like maybe pick a topic about something else too. And
oh, absolutely.
It might be my first foray into stuff like that. Whenever I have guests on, I always go into like random topic stuff, but it's like, we could plan for something and get something figured out at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. I'm game. So, yeah, cause I see like your action figures in the background. Is that a Dr. Octopus, Marvel Legends back there?
Yes, back right there. Yeah. And there's stuff this way, and I'm running into a real mess here because I'm moving and I'm closing on. So we're getting a new house, my wife and I, and so we're closing on that on June 18th. So now we're at the point where we're starting to pack, and all of the toys and stuff. It's this whole room that I'm in. It's not all toys, but there's things over there where people can't see. And I'm starting to like pack things up. So this room looks okay here, but really it is a mess everywhere around. But yeah, so I have got way too many toys. Like I think all my collectibles and stuff it's worth more than what my car is worth. I don't drive a super nice car or anything, but it's just like I have too much in other things. It's just ridiculous.
Like I'm the same way. I found this at a thrift store the other day, and I'm like, I don't know what I'll do with it. Either trade it or like hang it up or something. But I love that stuff too. And that one I just realized is a talking one, so that's great. So I didn't know that.
You're good. So. You're good. It'll add some character to this recording. I'm okay with that. I'm not a perfectionist with those things at all. So we're good. We're good. But no, yeah, there's so many things that I have interest in that it's just like I'm just struggling to find the time to do it all. So we'll have to coordinate something, and we can have a couple topics in mind. You're Spider-Man in the background.
Yep, that was him. I just looked at him. So yeah, I'm like that too. I used to be into all of that fun stuff, Marvel Legends, WWE action figures, and I love that stuff. So yeah, thanks again, man. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem. No, thank you again so much for the time, Rob, and hope you have a good rest of your night. I love that. That's great. I'm definitely keeping that in. I'm keeping that in.
Should.
I hope everyone loves that Spider-Man in the background. All right.
Hey, you can say you have Peter Parker on your show too.
So there we go. That'll work. All right, Rob. Thank you so much.
Thank you.